Welcome everyone, this is Yasser Al-Wasifi from Learn Dental series. Today we will continue the discussion of the topic of adhesion and adhesive. Firstly, I would like to disclaim that I don't receive fees, compensation or royalties from the sales of any of the products shown or discussed in this presentation. Also, the presentation hasn't been sponsored by any company, agency or organization and it is only prepared for educational purposes. Also, this presentation is copyright protected and could not be transmitted by any means without the prior written permission of the author. Today, we are still focusing on clarifying the rationale and the principles of bonding to both enamel and dentin. In the first episode, we discussed already the principles of adhesion in general and what is the modes of adhesion and what are the advantages of introducing adhesion in restorative dentistry. Also, in episode 2, we started to discuss the adherent surfaces, which are the tooth structures or the substrate for adhesion, including enamel and dentin structures of the cavity preparation. Already we had discussed all the items related to enamel structure, including review of its structure, including the concept of adhesion to enamel, which was identified by acid etching, introduced by Michel Bonocore, which creates selective dissolution of enamel rods more than interrod substance, creating micropores that will be occupied by resin adhesive, creating microtags that will solidify and create micromechanical retention with enamel. And the clinical steps, including two major steps. One was the acid etching of enamel, and the second was the resin infiltration into enamel. Today we will continue in episode 3, the adhesion to dentin. Adhesion to dentin with the same sequence like we discussed like that of enamel. We will discuss the dentin structure, we will discuss problems encountered in adhesion to dentin, and the principles and the clinical steps for bonding with dentin. Let us start with the review of dentin structure. Dentin structure histologically, its basic unit or unit structure of the dentin is the dentinal tubule itself that traverses the entire thickness of dentin from all sides, either from crown or root. All the dentin structure constitutes of dentinal tubules. This dentinal tubules contains the protoplasmic or cytoplasmic extensions of the odontoblastic cells and fills this tubule, and all around this cytoplasmic process is surrounded by fluid, which is the dentinal fluid. Whether the head or the cell itself are the odontoblastic cell layer of the pulp. In between the dentinal tubules, a collagen network of intertubular dentin that holds calcium hydroxyapatite crystals are present. Histologically, these dentinal tubules showing an S-shaped wavy course in the crown and starts to be less curved or more straighter in the incisor ridges, cusps, and root areas tends to be straightened. Also, the number of dentinal tubules and diameter varies from the dentino-enamel junction up to the bulb. In near to the dentino-enamel junction, they are with low diameter and they are apart from each other. That's why each square millimeter contains about 20 thousandths of dentinal tubules. While near to the bulb, they start to enlarge their diameter and at the same time collimate and approach each other until they become about 45 thousandths of dentinal tubules in square millimeter. If you imagine this God creature, you will discover that this orientation or this architecture is a normal protective action from God to the bulb. How? Number one, the dentinal tubules showing narrower diameter near to dentino-enamel junction. They are apart from each other. In the crown, they took an S-shaped wavy course. All of these architecture delay the passage and slowed down the passage of any irritant to the pulp, in addition to the direction of dentinal fluids that is going upward, not inward. So when you imagine a microorganism that should penetrate and infect the pulp, it should have a smaller molecular weight that enables it to pass through the narrow diameter of the dentinal tubules from the dentino-enamel junction. He should find a path or portal of entry while they are apart from each other to find this portal at the dentino-enamel junction. Also, it should have the ability to swim against the current of the dentinal fluid. All of these are protective actions or natural protective mechanisms to protect the pulp. That's why the dentinal tubules tends to be more straighter under incisal edges and the cusp tips due to the thickness of enamel that adds more protection. So we are not in need for this shaped wavy course as much as the rest of dentin. Again, the same as in the roots, which are embedded inside the periodontal attachment and spawn. That's why it tends to be more straighter. And this explains also why when you have exposed root, the hypersensitivity increases, because already you have a much lesser way to access the pulp through the straight dentinal tubules. The following is a colored scanning electron micrograph showing the structure of dentin. This is the histological pattern, and we will refer to it to many problems encountered in bonding with dentin. Also, typically, dentin is heterogeneous in structure, not homogeneous or not tends to be homogeneous like enamel. Dentin is 70 to 75 inorganic contents by weight, 20% organic material, 5 to 10% water. It has a rich water contents and a richer organic contents than enamel. By volume, 50% are inorganic structure, 25% are water, 25% organic structure. So dentin is less mineralized than enamel, but more mineralized than bone and cementum. Mineral contents changes or tends to be increased by time, and dentin lost its viscoelastic character by aging. When comparing this and this pie chart, then it is about 70% weight percentage, 50% volume percentage of inorganic, 20% organic by weight, and 25% organic by volume, 10% water by weight, 25% water by volume. Then you should think twice before bonding to dentin. It has a great amount of water, which increase hydrophilicity of dentin, and it has organic contents. Both of them, in total, the summation of them constitutes 50% of the volumetric percentage of dentin are adhesive, or materials that counteract the adhesion to dentin. While also, before we shift to another issue, and I think I will discuss it earlier than expected, when you etch dentin, etching is thought to remove inorganic contents. Okay, that's why it has a great ability to dissolve enamel rods more than the interrod substance. Here, when you remove part volume of the percentage of dentin, which constitutes 50% by etching, then you are lowering again the percentage, and you gave the upper hand to organic contents and water, then you increase the adhesive characteristics of dentin. Let me remind you with enamel. This pie chart is from enamel structure. Enamel structure was more homogeneous than dentin. How? Enamel structure was 95% organic, which ranges from 95 up to 97. The upper hand is for rods, and the lower percentage, which is 95, for interrod substance, okay, which constitutes also 88% of volume, percentage of enamel structure, and 1% by weight organic, 2% by volume organic. The remaining part is water, which 4% by weight and 10% by water. When you acid etch enamel and removes part of the inorganic structure, still you have the majority of the structure. The highest percentage is inorganic. So enamel seems to be more homogeneous, far homogeneous than dentin. That's why when we consider adhesion to dentin, there is 6 problems that should be put into consideration when you are designing a concept to bond with dentin. The first 4 of them are related to its structure, or the fifth 5 of them are related to its structure, and 1 is related to the procedure of cavity preparation. Number 1, heterogeneous composition of dentin. Dentin seems to be heterogeneous in structure, as it consists of inorganic part and organic part, and the organic part has a valuable percentage that could not be denied, could not be skipped when you design a technique or a theory or a concept to bond with dentin. When you etching dentinal surface, it leads to dissolution of the inorganic part, exposing more collagen fiber. Then it is relatively considered to increase the organic percentage and lowering the surface energy, because all organic are less surface energy material than inorganic. That's number 1. Number 2, if you design a concept to bond with dentin via dentinal tubules, it has a complex histological structure. Dentinal tubules vary in number, diameter, percentage of distribution between dentinal tubules and collagen fibers, okay, from the dentino-enamel junction up to the bulb. Accordingly, how could you design a bonding concept? Bonding concept with 20 thousandths of dentinal tubules, or with 45 thousandths of dentinal tubules near to the bulb. Their diameter, orientation, their number, their percentage of distribution are varied from dentino-enamel junction up to the bulb. Also, the inherent lower surface energy of dentin due to the higher organic contents of dentin, it leads to lower surface energy. Furthermore, as we mentioned before, etching of dentin, removing or dissolute a part of its inorganic contents that give a chance to organic contents to be more apparently adhesive and more obviously adhesive in the process of bonding to dentin. Why? Because now you are further lowering the surface energy by reducing the amount of inorganic contents. All of these leads to that the power of surface tension of the adhesive liquid will be more than the power of surface energy of dentin itself, which already reduces the wetting ability of adhesive and reduces its infiltration inside dentin. Not only that, even the mineralization, mineral contents, which constitutes the 50% of volume of dentin, are definite and variable, not only by aging, not only in the same oral cavity or for the same patient, or even for the same tooth. It differs. Circumbulbar dentin, which occupying the main bulk of dentin, is more calcified, more mineralized than mantle dentin and interglobular dentin. But also, due to irritation to the bulb, in certain cases, sclerotic atubular dentin is formed, which is much more calcified and needs special management. It is called a marble dentin. It's a marble-like structure which is difficult to be conditioned with acid. All of these are in the same tooth. But one of the biggest problem is the smear layer. What is the smear layer? Let us discuss the photograph of this glass window at the right side. The upper one is a window contaminated with dust that adheres to the glass in a rainy day due to rains, and with the heat of the sun, it adheres, smeared it over the glass. If you try to clean the glass by any means, you will create much more frictional force that will strike this appearance and it will be invisible glass. If you would like to get a crystal clear view, you should use any cleaner that dissolves this dust smeared by water from the rain and sun, and sometimes frictional heat from a towel or from a paper when you try to remove this. When you cut a cavity, a similar condition will exist. You are cutting a cavity, debris are released due to this cutting. These debris are dentin chips, enamel chips, caries, bagged and smeared by the cutting tool and by the frictional heat and presence of saliva, or even if you are preparing a cavity in a completely isolated rubber damped condition or tooth, the outflow of the dentinal fluid, all of these are cooking the smear layer or this debris with each other, forming a dough that are packed and smeared inside the dentinal tubules. This is called smear layer. It is a thin, invisible microscopic layer formed of any calcific debris produced by instrumentation to dentin, enamel, or even cementum, burnished by the cutting instrument due to frictional heat and forced inside the dentinal tubules and dentin surface to be part of the underlying tissues. This smear layer, as you had shown in this scanning electron micrograph, is formed of two separate layers. The first one is loose, thin, porous, weak, which is a superficial layer, while there is a plug inside the dentinal tubules which is tightly packed inside it. When you imagine or consider the hypersensitivity takes place according to hydrodynamic theory through movement of the dentinal fluid up and down and its friction alongside the cytoplasmic process of the dentinal process inside the dentinal tubule, which is transmitted into the cell, which is the odontoblastic cell itself, into secretion of inflammatory exudate and transceptors that will be transmitted to the nerve plexus underneath, and this is in a friction or a fraction of a second, that leads to hypersensitivity. This is what is explained by Brunstrom, and this is what is explained through hydrodynamic theory. Then, after cutting a cavity, smear layer is sealing these dentinal tubules with a tightly packed debris that is smeared by instrument and frictional heat in combination with the dentinal fluid or sometimes saliva. This is the plug, while still you have a superficial, porous, weak layer on the surface of dentin. Then, this smear layer provides you great advantages. It reduces dentin permeability by blocking the bacterial penetration and also blocks the bacterial penetration into the dentinal tubules. All of these prevents outflow of the dentinal fluid and it seals the dentinal tubules. This will result in reduced hypersensitivity and ionic exchange between the restorative material and the tooth structure. That is why, let me just between brackets put something, that's why 30 to 40, maybe 50 years ago, All researchers recommended the use of cobalt varnish under amalgam that seals the dentinal tubules to prevent ionic exchange of corrosive products into dentin, okay, and to improve the sealing ability of amalgam. But after discovering this smear layer in the early 60s, 1960-62, they discovered that already the dentinal tubules are not opened after you prepare the cavity. Especially if you could imagine they were preparing cavities with low speed without coolant or insufficient cooling, then the attachment of the dentinal plug was stronger than nowadays. Okay, then they stopped using varnish because they don't like to increase the steps of restoring the teeth, because if you are increasing much more steps, you are opening the door for mistakes. If you would like to have a successful restorative procedure, you should reduce the possibility for mistakes by reducing the number of steps you are following. Okay, then it has a great advantages. Okay, but it has a disadvantage when you are considering adhesion that you are in need for with resin-based restorative materials to improve adaptation and to reduce micro-leakage, to seal the gap formed due to difference in coefficient of thermal expansion and contraction, and to compensate for polymerization shrinkage, and we would like to direct the polymerization shrinkage to the free surface rather than the bonded surfaces. Okay, but when you apply this concept, your bond will face the superficial loose layer. How could you bond with a loose layer? Then, how you could manage this problem? If you totally remove the smear layer, then you will get the highest adhesive bond strength, but at the same time, you have increased possibility, or absolutely you will have a post-operative hypersensitivity. If you didn't remove it, then you are reducing the post-operative hypersensitivity to minimal, but at the same time, it's a failed bonding or adhesive procedure. How you could solve this? Most of researchers prefer something. Dentin conditioning. What is meant by conditioning? Is it different than etching? Technically, you use the same shell. But in general, as a concept, conditioning means that adjusting the originally formed surface characteristics. What is meant by that? Enamel was not porous. Enamel doesn't have any pores. You are creating pores by acid gel. That's why it is called etching. While dentin already have pores, but you need just to improve its penetrability. That's why it is called dentin conditioning. We will discuss it soonly within few seconds in details. This will result in total removal of the superficial layer, which is loose, partial removal of the plug, not all the plug, or even if it is all the plug now, okay, with some systems, I will seal it again, and exposure of the intertubular collagen network. Let us review these scanning electron micrographs. This is the dentinal tubule. We opened part of the dentinal tubule while the other part is still plugged. We removed all the superficial layer and opened the network or collagen network. In this cross-sectional view, it's much more obvious that you already have porous and exposed intertubular collagen network, and all of these spaces will be occupied by bonding. You already open the dentinal tubules, and this is another view or cross-sectional view. It's simple as this? No, it's not simple as this. all the details will come later. But when you open this, you will directly face the sixth problem, which is intrinsic wetness of dentin. Dentin is wet containing dentinal fluid. How could you manage this? And when you go deeper to the pulp, this wetness increased. Then the dentin is hydrophilic, and you will try to infiltrate it with hydrophobic resin material that will repel outside dentin. Then the surface of dentin itself, even if you manage the smear layer, you will face the intrinsic wetness of dentin. This is the nature of dentin itself. How could we manage all of these? Okay, this is a schematic diagram showing that the dentinal tubules, which is plugged with smear layer plugs and superficial layer. Once you remove it, you will face a hydrophilic surface. And this is another colored schematic diagram showing that the dentinal plug and superficial layer are already blocking the dentinal tubules, reducing its permeability and controlling its fluid content. But how could I manage this loose superficial layer of dentin? I couldn't adhere to already loose structure. In the upcoming episodes, we will discuss in details how to solve these problems encountered in adhesion to dentin. Also, we will discuss how to adhere to dentin based on the principles and concept of dentin hybridization, including all the details of clinical steps. Please don't hesitate to ask. Your questions are welcomed at any time. You could ask by commenting to this video and I will reply as soon as possible. Also, you could contact me via my contact info either by email or sending me a DM via Twitter or any social media, which will be mentioned in the next slide, and also I will reply to you as soon as possible. Thank you for assigning this time to listen to me, and please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and activate the notification to get all the updates. Thank you.